you are caught
Tom Whitaker's hand
red-handed.
trembled as he flicked on the desk lamp at 2:03 a.m., his voice sharp but tired. "Sarah," he said, pointing at the woman in the faded blue maid's uniform and bright yellow rubber gloves. "What are you doing at my desk?" His suit was pressed to perfection, shoes shining like the city lights below, but his gaze held more weariness than mistrust. Sarah May sat quietly at the CEO's marble desk, her fingers typing something urgent on his laptop. The soft clicking of keys echoed in the empty office. She didn't flinch, even as he pointed. Not threatening, but desperate. Why had she broken the rule? Why now at this hour? What could be so important that a maid would risk her job at the highest floor of Whitaker Tower? Risk everything just to press a few buttons on the CEO's laptop? The silence between them was heavy, like thunder before rain. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled below them like a blanket of stars. Tom saw only a maid, the woman who scrubbed his office floors for years, who smiled shyly at his secretary, who never spoke unless spoken to. But in this moment, she was more than a maid. She was a mystery in rubber gloves, and Tom needed answers. Sarah lifted her chin, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitaker. I'll leave if you want, but give me one more minute and, well, you'll see. I promise." The words sounded like a plea, but her eyes wouldn't turn away. Tom stood over her, Billionaire CEO on one side, Maid on the other, a chasm of money and power stretched between them. She had nothing but courage and a secret worth everything he owned. Tom's mind raced. Was she stealing? Spying? Desperate for something only he could give? What drove a person to risk so much at such an hour? He tried to remember the last time he'd looked Sarah in the eyes. Had he ever truly seen her before now? In 12 years, had he ever asked about her life beyond these walls? The air conditioning hummed softly. A distant siren wailed somewhere in the streets below. Time seemed to slow. He stepped forward, his leather shoes barely making a sound on the polished marble. His voice came out gentler this time. "Sarah, if you're in trouble, let me help. But tell me, what are you doing?" The computer screen glowed with an eerie blue light, casting shadows across Sarah's tired face. Numbers flickered. Lines of code scrolled. Something big was happening. Something Tom didn't understand. Sarah's hands didn't stop moving, steady and practiced. She said, "You'll want to see this. I didn't plan for you to catch me, but maybe it's better you did." Her words made Tom uneasy. Was this blackmail? A desperate ask for mercy? Or a confession only the night could hold? He felt his heart quickening, that old instinct from his trading days kicking in. The one that told him when something life-changing was about to happen. For Tom, the world had always been black and white. Loyal employees stayed silent. Rich men never had to worry about maids with mysteries. Yet tonight, everything was upside down. The carefully constructed order of his universe was crumbling with every keystroke. Suddenly, Sarah hit enter. The sound was louder than it should have been, like a door slamming shut on one life and opening to another. Tom leaned in, reading over her shoulder, and his billionaire life changed in an instant. On the laptop screen lit up a bank statement, a staggering $800 million, all linked to Sarah May's name. Wire transfers, investment accounts, trust funds, all bearing her name in plain black letters. Tom stared, speechless. His mouth opened, but no words came at first. How did you? He could barely speak. His throat felt tight. Sarah finally looked up, meeting his eyes directly for what felt like the first time ever. "I'll explain, but it's not what you think. Not a dime came from you, Tom. I needed you to see it before anyone else did." His mind spun like a carousel out of control. Was she a con artist? Had she made some wild mistake in the numbers? Or was there a story behind this mountain of money, a story bigger than either of them? He felt dizzy, like the floor beneath him had turned to water. Sarah reached for a worn photo tucked under her phone, a faded snapshot with bent corners and yellowed edges. A young boy with Sarah's eyes and a tired smile stared back from the image. He looked about 7, holding a soccer ball, standing in front of a modest apartment building. I'm only here at night, she whispered, her voice barely audible, because it's safest. What happens next depends on what you choose. Will you listen, or should I leave it all behind? Tom closed his eyes, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah, what did you do? The question hung in the air, more fragile than pride, more honest than anything Tom had said in years. Outside, the city was quiet, sleeping through another late hour. Inside, Tom faced a new world, one where the maid knew things no CEO ever guessed, and the strongest man in the building realized he wasn't really in control, had never been in control. Tom pulled up a chair and sat down beside Sarah. He didn't speak. He just waited. His hands rested on his knees, fingers interlaced. In the reflection of the window, he could see both of them, two shadows in an empty office, surrounded by darkness and secrets. Sarah took a long, slow breath and began. 12 years ago, I wasn't a maid. I was a software engineer. Not a famous one, just good at what I did. Really good. I worked for a small tech startup in Austin, Texas. We were building something new, an encryption system for online banking. It was simple, fast, and secure. We thought we'd change the world. Tom listened, his face unreadable. But inside, something was shifting. My partner was a man named David. We weren't just business partners. We were engaged, high school sweethearts who made it work through college. We built that company together from a tiny apartment with 2 laptops and a dream. We called it Sky Vault. Sarah's voice caught. She looked down at her yellow gloves, still damp from cleaning supplies. The contrast struck Tom suddenly. Those gloves and the story she was telling. They didn't match. One day David told me he was going to meet some investors in California. Big names. Silicon Valley money. He said it was our big break. He kissed me goodbye at the airport and promised he'd be back in 3 days. I remember waving until I couldn't see him anymore. Tom leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What happened? Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She learned long ago how to hold them back. He never came back. He sold the company without telling me. Sold it for $850 million to a consortium of banks. Took every patent, every line of code we wrote together, and signed it all away. My name wasn't on the paperwork. He made sure of that. Tom's jaw tightened. He knew men like David. He'd done business with them. He stole it from you. He did, Sarah said quietly, and then he disappeared. Changed his name. Moved overseas. Hong Kong, I think. Maybe Singapore. I tried to fight it, hired a lawyer with borrowed money, but I had nothing. No proof. No money. No one believed a girl from a small town in West Texas could have built something worth that much. She paused, staring at the glowing screen, her reflection ghostly in its light. So I became invisible. I moved here to New York, took a cleaning job, raised my son alone. His name is Marcus. He was 3 when David left. I told myself the past didn't matter, that I'd find peace in the quiet, that being a good mother was enough. Tom's voice was soft, almost tender. But you didn't, did you? Sarah shook her head. No, because 6 months ago, I found out David died. Heart attack. He was only 43. And when he died, his estate went into probate. Everything he owned was being sorted out by lawyers. Turned out he never married, never had kids. His family didn't know what to do with all that money. She looked up at Tom, her voice steady now, stronger. I hired a forensic accountant with the last of my savings, and we found it. Buried in offshore accounts, hidden trusts, fake company names, my half of the sale. The money David promised me, the money I earned. The money that should have been mine 12 years ago. Tom stared at the screen, the numbers almost blurring together. $800 million. Most of it, Sarah said, after legal fees, taxes, and years of interest compounding in accounts he never touched. The courts finally ruled in my favor 3 weeks ago. It's mine now, legally, officially, every last dollar. Tom sat back, stunned. His whole body felt numb. Then why are you here? Why are you still cleaning my office at 2 a.m.? Sarah smiled, sad and tired and somehow still beautiful. Because I don't know how to stop. For 12 years, I've been Sarah the maid. Sarah who scrubs floors and stays quiet. Sarah, who nods and says, "Yes, sir." And right away, ma'am. "I don't know how to be anyone else anymore." She gestured to the laptop, her yellow-gloved hand looking almost absurd against the sleek technology. "I was transferring the first payment tonight into a trust for my son, for his college, for his future. I wanted to do it here, in this building, because you were kind to me once." Tom frowned, trying to remember. "I was?" "3 years ago," Sarah said, her voice softening. "You saw me crying in the hallway, 10th floor by the elevators. My son was in the hospital, pneumonia. I couldn't afford the treatment. I was sitting there during my lunch break trying to figure out how to tell the doctors I couldn't pay. You walked by, saw me, and you stopped." Tom's eyes softened. The memory came flooding back. "You didn't ask questions. You didn't make me explain. You just handed me an envelope with enough money to cover the bills. $5,000. You told me to take the week off. Paid leave." Tom remembered. He remembered her tears, her trembling hands, the way she couldn't look at him when she whispered thank you. "You didn't have to do that," Sarah said, "but you did, and I never forgot. Not for one single day." Tom's voice was quiet, almost ashamed. "I didn't know your story, Sarah. I didn't know what you'd been through, what you'd survived." "No one does," Sarah said. "That's the problem. People see the uniform and think that's all there is. But we're more than what we wear. We're more than the jobs we do to survive. We're people with stories, with dreams, with pasts that matter." Tom nodded slowly, feeling something break open inside his chest. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sarah stood, pulling off her yellow gloves one finger at a time. She placed them gently on the desk like she was setting down something sacred. "I came here tonight to say goodbye. I'm leaving the company. Tomorrow's my last day. I'm going back to school. I'm going to teach kids how to code, how to protect their ideas, how to make sure no one ever does to them what was done to me." She looked at Tom with clear eyes. "I just wanted you to know, you were the only person in this building who ever saw me as human. The only one." Tom stood too, his heart pounding. "Sarah, wait." She turned. "You don't have to leave," Tom said. "Not like this. Let me help you. Let me be part of what you're building." Sarah smiled, the first real smile Tom had ever seen from her. It transformed her face, made her look younger, lighter. "You already did, Tom. You already did." She walked toward the door, her footsteps soft on the marble. Then she stopped, hand on the doorknob. "One more thing. That encryption system I built, Sky Vault, it's still the most secure system in the world. Half the banks in America use it, including yours. Every time you log in, you're using something I created." Tom's eyes widened. "You built that?" Sarah nodded. "I did. And now the world will know." She left the office, the door clicking softly behind her like the end of a chapter. Tom stood alone in the glow of the desk lamp, staring at the empty chair where Sarah had sat. For the first time in years, he felt small, not because he'd lost anything, but because he'd finally understood how much he'd never seen, how blind wealth had made him, how deaf power had left him. Outside, the city was still, but inside Tom Whitaker, something had changed, and it would never be the same again. The next morning, Tom arrived at his office before dawn, before the cleaning crew, before the security guards changed shifts. He hadn't slept. His mind kept replaying Sarah's words, her story, the quiet strength in her voice, the way she'd sat there, in her uniform, worth $800 million, and still called him Sir. He'd spent his whole life building empires, closing deals, making billions, but he'd never once stopped to ask the woman who cleaned his office what her name really meant, what her hands had built before they held a mop, what dreams she'd buried to survive. He opened his laptop and typed Sarah's name into the company database. There it was, stark and simple. Sarah May, custodial staff. Hired March 2013. Salary, $32,000 per year. Performance, excellent. Attendance, perfect. Tom closed his eyes. 12 years. She'd worked for him for 12 years and he'd never known, never asked, never wondered. He picked up his phone and called his head of HR, waking her up. I need you to pull Sarah May's file. Everything. And I need you to do something else. What's that, sir? Her voice was groggy, confused. I need you to find out if she's serious about teaching. Because if she is, I want to fund it. Everything. School, resources, whatever she needs. There was a long pause on the line. Sir, I don't understand. Who is Sarah May? Tom felt a pang in his chest. Even HR didn't know her. You will, he said. Just do it. I want it done by noon. By noon, Tom had a plan. He called his lawyer, his accountant, and his head of corporate development. He told them about Sarah. Not all of it, just enough. He told them he wanted to create a foundation, a scholarship program for people like her, people who'd been overlooked, stolen from, forgotten, people who deserved a second chance. How much are we talking? His accountant asked, skeptical. $50 million to start, Tom said without hesitation, and Sarah May will run it. His team was silent, stunned. Sir, with all due respect, she's a maid. Tom's voice turned cold, sharper than it had ever been with his own team. No, she's an engineer. She's a mother. She's a survivor. And she's worth more than anyone in this building ever gave her credit for, including me. He hung up. That evening, as the sun began to set, Tom drove to the small apartment building on the east side of town where Sarah lived. He'd gotten the address from HR. He'd never been there before. The neighborhood was quiet, working class with kids playing basketball in the street. It smelled like someone was grilling burgers nearby. He didn't even know if she'd open the door. He knocked, waited, knocked again. A teenage boy answered, tall, lean, with Sarah's eyes and a wary expression. Can I help you? Is your mom home? Tom asked gently. The boy studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly and called over his shoulder. Mom, someone's here. Sarah appeared in the doorway, still in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No uniform, no gloves. She looked surprised, maybe even a little scared. Mr. Whitaker? Just Tom, he said. Can we talk? She hesitated, glanced back at her son, then stepped outside, closing the door behind her. They stood on the narrow porch, the evening air cool and quiet. A breeze rustled the leaves of a nearby tree. I'm not here to ask you to stay, Tom said quickly. I know you've made your choice. I respect that, but I need to ask you something. Sarah crossed her arms, waiting, guarded. You said you wanted to teach, to help kids protect their ideas, to make sure no one goes through what you went through. She nodded. That's right. Then let me help you do it, Tom said, the words tumbling out faster now. I'm starting a foundation, $50 million, scholarships, legal aid, mentorship programs, for people who've been cheated, overlooked, or left behind. And I want you to run it. I need you to run it. Sarah stared at him, speechless. Tom, I know you don't need my money, Tom said quickly. You've got your own now, more than enough. But you need a platform. You need resources. You need people who listen. And I can give you that. Let me give you that. Sarah's voice was soft, careful. Why? Why do you care? Because you were right, Tom said, and his voice cracked just a little. I've spent my whole life at the top of that tower, and I never once looked down. I never saw the people who kept it standing. I never saw you, and that's on me. But I see you now, and I don't want to waste that. I can't waste that. He met her eyes, and for the first time in years, he let his guard down completely. Please. Sarah was quiet for a long time. A car drove by. A dog barked in the distance. Then she smiled, in that same real smile from the night before. Okay, Tom, let's do it. Tom felt something lift inside him, like a weight he didn't know he'd been carrying. Thank you. But on one condition, Sarah said, her voice firm. Name it. You have to tell your story too, not just mine. You have to tell people why you're doing this. You have to be honest. No PR spin, no corporate polish. Just the truth. Tom hesitated. He'd spent his whole life managing his image, controlling the narrative. My story's not that interesting. Sarah shook her head. It is, because you're the billionaire who finally listened, and that matters more than you know. Tom nodded slowly. Okay, I will, I promise. They shook hands, and for the first time in years, Tom felt like he was doing something that mattered. Not for money, not for power, not for his legacy, but for people, for Sarah, for her son, for everyone who'd ever been overlooked. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, the Sarah May Foundation opened its doors in a renovated building in Brooklyn. The press coverage was massive. News outlets across the country ran the story. Billionaire CEO partners with former Maid to launch $50 million foundation for overlooked innovators. Sarah stood at the podium during the opening ceremony, her son Marcus beside her in a new suit, and told her story. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't make herself a hero. She just told the truth, the pain, the loss, the quiet years, and the unexpected redemption. When she finished, the room was silent. 200 people sat frozen, some with tears streaming down their faces. Then someone started clapping, then another. Then the whole room erupted in applause that didn't stop for 5 full minutes. Tom watched from the back, his eyes damp, his heart full. He'd never felt prouder of something he'd had so little to do with. After the ceremony, a young woman approached Sarah. She was in her 20s holding a battered notebook, her hands shaking. "Ms. May," she said, her voice breaking, "I just wanted to say thank you. My boss stole my app design. I've been fighting him in court for 2 years. I was about to give up yesterday. But your story, it gave me hope." Sarah took the young woman's hand in both of hers. "Don't give up. Not now. Not ever. Let us help you. That's why we're here," the woman cried. Sarah held her, and Tom realized, standing there in the back of the room, that this was what wealth was really for. Not towers or yachts or private jets, but this. Holding someone's hand when they thought no one cared. Seeing someone when the world had made them invisible. A year later, Tom and Sarah sat together on a quiet bench outside the foundation's headquarters. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The city hummed around them, alive and endless. "Do you ever regret it?" Tom asked. "Working as a maid all those years?" Sarah thought about it, really thought. "No, it taught me something money never could. It taught me humility. It taught me how to see people, really see them. And it taught me that your job doesn't define your worth. Your character does." Tom nodded. "I'm learning that too. Finally." Sarah smiled. "You're doing good, Tom. Keep going." They sat in silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Two people from different worlds brought together by a midnight secret and the courage to listen, to really listen. Sometimes the people we overlook are the ones with the most to teach us. Sometimes the person in the uniform is the one who built the very ground we stand on. And sometimes the richest thing you can do is stop, listen, and see someone, really see them, for the first time. Tom learned that at 2 a.m. in a quiet office, and it changed everything. What do you think? Have you ever overlooked someone who turned out to be extraordinary? Have you ever been overlooked yourself? Share your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to Emotional Stories for more real, heartfelt tales that remind us what it means to be human.